Hello everyone, what's up? In this video I'm going to show you how I made this wet mud and snow diorama for the Grimm FT-17 tank, which I recently finished. So if you're looking for a step-by-step tutorial on how to create a winter diorama with snow and mud effects, this video is for you. Let's start, shall we? This is my little rectangle of XPS foam after I cut it as best I could with my cordless foam cutter. Since I don't have a wire cutter, this involved a lot of sanding and a mess of epic proportions. So sorry, but I had to do that off camera. After that I cut a 5mm thick piece of foam board and I glued it to the bottom in order to reinforce the base. Most importantly, I used both the foam cutter and a wire brush in order to carve the XPS, with the idea to create a pretty steep incline with the tank going uphill. The next step could be considered overkill, as most of the pastes that will come later already have some texture, but I have used this neutral texture by AK many times before, and I really love the finish that it provides. An added bonus is that it will seal all the pores in the foam, providing an excellent base for any paint, washes, or whatever comes later. This AK acrylic paste is really easy to apply with a brush, and I would highly recommend it for wargamers who just need some texture on the basis of their models. If you add some water, you can also vary the consistency of the paint, and by extension the grit. When I was done, I went over it once with a small spatula and inspected the base visually to make sure that I hadn't missed any spots. Quite happy with the results, I just let the base dry for 24 hours. After that, I primed the top of the base with AK black primer and let that cure for another 24 hours. Not only was this 48 hours hiatus not a problem for me, but it also provided with more time to concentrate on the Grimm FT-17 tank. After the base had been primed black, I decided to apply flex paste, which I thought would be the foundation for all later snow effects. I've used this product twice before with reasonably good effect, and I knew that it was nice and easy to apply. However, as you will see later, I would end up being disappointed with the results that it provided this time. But anyway, one thing at a time. When I was done with the flex paste, I decided to use Snow Microballoons by AK to create the illusion of freshly falling snow. I sprinkled the product liberally over the flex paste before the latter was dry, and I gave it a couple of hours to dry. Capturing white on camera is really tricky, so I apologize in advance for not being able to show you the finish at this stage. Things were looking pretty good though. Now it was time for the mud. For this I picked Muddy Ground by AK, which I had used on some Star Wars Legion's bases recently with really good results. This paste has quite a lot of texture built in, unlike the equivalent ones by Ammo of MiG, which are basically totally smooth. Now, like I said earlier, you could argue that this made my initial texture application redundant, but in any case I was really happy with the resulting effect. By the way, I should mention that this paste dries pretty matte, so it is not sufficient by itself to represent wet mud. This I had learned in my previous project, but I had an easy fix in mind. Once the application of the mud was complete, things were looking really good, and I had an idea. How about using some rocks to give some more height to the diorama, and at the same time, a background or backdrop for the tank? About a year ago, my son and I created a bunch of rocks using Woodland Scenics molds and plaster for our still unfinished Hoth project. This is one of those rocks, one which I chose as a sort of backdrop for the Grimm FT-17 tank. This gave me and my son a nice and fun painting project together using the amazing liquid pigments range also by Woodland Scenics. To get our ratios right, we first used a measuring cup and added about 8 parts of water for 1 part of paint. I then transferred this mix to a metal painting well, which is a lot more stable and convenient. While I held the rock in place, my son started applying the gray liquid pigment, As you can see, this works very much like a wash. However, the effect is really subtle, and as they dry, these liquid pigments do not create the ugly tite marks or build-up which is so common with acrylic washes. I had instructed my son to concentrate on recessed areas and to leave things as random as possible, and as you can see, he did really well indeed, and the rock looked quite nice just with its first application of gray. After that though, we switched to black, but this time concentrating on only some spots. Next came green, with a far more selective approach yet. We went almost exclusively for the lower half of the rock. There was in fact a fourth, even more diluted pass with raw umber, but I forgot to press record for that one, so I'm sorry guys, but I'm sure that you really get the idea. A couple of hours later, I glued the rocks to the base, and I was very happy with the results. Doing this with my son had been really fun, and the addition of the rocks had made a huge difference to the diorama. However, at this stage I also tried to remove the excess microballoons, and it all came off. None of it had stuck to the flex paste. This left me with some really cool looking rocks, with a really cool muddy road, and with some really lame snow. Undeterred, however, I decided to switch gears and products and try AK Terrain Snow for the first time. Would it be just the same as flex paste? Well, the fact is, the moment I opened it, I already knew that it would be superior. Its fluffy, spongy texture was completely different, and as I started applying it, I was really impressed with how realistic it looked by comparison. Now, admittedly, applying it required more effort, but I quickly realized that adding some water or simply dampening my brush made it a lot easier to blend into the surrounding details. The result was simply night and day compared to the flex paste, and after the disappointment earlier, this was a huge relief. When I was done, I took a flat brush and with some water I started working on the edges, trying to soften the transition between mud and snow or snow and rock. This blending worked well, and I got ready for yet another round of microballoons, this time with hopefully better results. Again, I applied the microballoons liberally, and I allowed the whole thing to dry for an hour or so. Would the microballoons all come off again? Let's see. Now it was time to create some slush or molten snow. For this I chose a regular AK snow paste, to which I added some snow sprinkles, then some microballoons, and lastly some still water in roughly equal proportions. I mixed this really well, which resulted in a thin, gel-like concoction. I then applied this liberally to all the areas where the muddy road and snow met, and in a couple of other spots where I hoped this would add visual interest. As an afterthought of sorts, before I finished with the slush, I decided to apply some snow to the top of the rocks. Rather than it being powdered snow, I thought it'd look cooler if it was also some kind of molten snow as well, whether that was realistic or not. Therefore, I applied some of the snow sprinkles product, and on top of that, a very small dusting of microballoons. With this done, I continued applying the slush mixture to the edges of the road, where I was hoping to create a really nice, dirty finish eventually. Happy with the results so far, now it was time to create the illusion of the tank tracks churning up all the mud. Therefore, I thought using AK wet ground which dries glossy, would be ideal for my use case. Applying this mud paste was nice and relaxing, and I also knew that the resulting tonal variation would make the finished product look a lot nicer. Before I was done, I checked again with the tank that I had the lines for the tracks more or less right, and then I blended the edges with water once again to soften the transition. At this stage, I decided to apply some touch-ups before moving to what would be the grand finale, so to speak. These included applying some more of the Molten Snow mixture to the sides and the center of the road, and then adding some more snow sprinkles to the rocks. When I was done, I was very happy with the results, and I set the diorama aside to dry for 24 hours. With the diorama now essentially done, the first additional effect that I wanted to create was that of puddles along the tracks, or if I could, something like half-frozen puddles of slush. For this I decided to make the same mix as before, but without the snow paste. That is to say, snow sprinkles, microballoons, and still water. I applied this to the road, trying to avoid symmetry as much as possible. After that, it was time to make things dirtier yet. I mixed a wet ground paste with some still water and some actual tap water, creating a sort of wash. I applied this both to the sides of the road and to some of the puddles that I had just created. I then took the previous mix and allowed it to blend itself with the mud wash. The only thing I did after this was apply some mud splatter effects, but I'm afraid that I again forgot to record that step. In any case, for the splatter, I used the same mud mix you just saw me make and the same airbrush technique that I used with the mud splatter on the tank itself. Therefore, I'm hoping that recreating that final step will be no trouble to any of you. So, what are my conclusions regarding this project? Well, first of all, making and painting this diorama has been one of the most rewarding projects I have ever completed, and definitely one of my top 3 projects for 2022. And I mean that both in terms of my enjoyment of them and how I rate myself, or my work, I should say. Whilst I enjoyed painting the tank and using etched brass for the first time, there were parts of that which were a little tedious, to be honest. By contrast, the entire diorama process from beginning to end was super relaxing for me, and even when things didn't work according to plan, I was confident that it would be okay in the end, and I knew that I was extending myself and learning new skills with this little snow and mud base. So are dioramas more fun? Are they more relaxing? I don't know actually, but to be honest, it seems that way to me. But could I do only dioramas and not tanks or vehicles? I don't know. And speaking of snow dioramas, let me tell you a secret. There is a new video coming, featuring a very special piece of wargaming terrain, and also snow. Let me know in the comments what you think it might be. But before I let you go, I would like to thank all of my YouTube members. Real life pressures have left me with very little time for the hobby, and much less the channel, since November basically. But despite the slowed down releases, you guys have been not only patient, but extremely supportive of me. Thank you guys, and I hope to bring you more fun weathering content in 2023. That is all from me for now, folks, but remember, keep it up and weather it out.